I think what we have done is create a mentality that so deprecates the value of life that all these other things follow very easily. You can't say to someone, life has only the value you give it, and expect that they're not going to apply that principle in areas where you might differ.
The Archbishop of Washington taking on the issue of abortion in an interview with Newsmax chief political columnist and White House correspondent John Gizzi. And John joins us again tonight from Newsmax Washington. John, it's great to have you back. The Archbishop's words resonated with so many of us. You have part 2 tonight. What are we going to hear?
We're going to hear a lot. The Archbishop, Cardinal Wuerl, is, if nothing else, a man who says what he means and means what he says on a variety of issues. Now, you echo a point that David Miliband, head of the International Rescue Committee, has made. When I spoke to him last year, he said America is a land of refugees, from Albert Einstein to Madeleine Albright to Sergey Brin, and he made it clear that he was opposed to some of the efforts in the U.S. Congress to put a hold on refugees coming to the United States. Is that your position as well?
Yeah. I think what we are capable as a country of doing is both being careful and compassionate. We're the most significant country on the planet. The resources we have, the capabilities we have, there's no reason why we cannot be compassionate in receiving people and careful in filtering those who are coming in so that we don't find ourselves in some dramatic situation down the road. We can do that. If there's a political will to do it, we have the capability of doing it.
So you would be opposed to a moratorium, as some members of Congress have said?
It doesn't make sense to say nobody coming from this land can come into our country. People have been in the pipeline trying to get into our country from Syria, from Iraq. Christians who are being driven out of the other minorities as well. It doesn't make sense to say we're going to stop all of this simply because we're concerned that in that mix there might be some bad people. Right. We're capable of being careful and compassionate.
Going back to Syria and the Middle East for a moment, some conservatives have actually praised Vladimir Putin for assisting Syrian President Assad and say that he's trying to protect the lives of Christians from ISIS. Putin himself says he's out to save the lives of Christians by intervening on Assad's behalf. Do you believe Vladimir Putin?
I stay out of that whole political quagmire because that's what it is. I'm always surprised at how language is used with such a casual attention to the connection of the words with the actual reality that they are supposed to reflect. And for that reason, I tend just to stay apart from that. As a pastor, my concern is the spiritual well-being and the physical care of refugees and migrants. But the rest of that puts a political tone to it that I leave to others.
Right. Speaking of pastors, one of the Americans who's been held prisoner in Iran is a Christian pastor, Sahib Abedini. His wife was interviewed on Newsmax television during the Pope's visit last year, and she said that if she could reach the Pope, she would urge him to call the leadership in Tehran and ask for the freedom for her husband and the other Americans held against their will, and said he has done this before, and 2 ladies who are Christian missionaries were released at the Pope's request. Is that something you would urge the Holy Father to do?
One of the things that I think we recognize is the effectiveness of communications at that level. Mm-hmm. And especially when you're dealing with personalities and their response, those type of communications are best maintained confidentially. I think the success of any type of intervention rests on the confidentiality of it, lest it become politicized and lest people whom the Holy Father is trying to convince to do something good might feel they're being used. So I don't know what's happening, but my experience in the past is that those types of conversations, if they're taking place, are best done confidentially.
John Gizzi, thank you for a remarkable, insightful interview. Great job.
Thank you, JD. It was my pleasure.
All righty, sir. You heard what the Archbishop had to say. Agree or disagree? Send your comments to us at newsmaxtv.com/comments. Up next, The Way I See It. Stay tuned.